I always ask them, have they seen the enterprise market? So there's an entire app store market just for businesses that most people don't even know exist. And there are, again, 100 trillion billion apps for everything from, calculating mileage when you're driving to, just the most rudimentary things, right? Counting people as they walk into a venue. The app in its function is for that business. In the enterprise store, of course, but in the personal app store, if you want something really cool or whatever, you're definitely taking a chance. But there's always just this one thing that finds its cult following. I mean, Pokemon is nothing more than a different, game, which was a TV show, that sort of thing. But who knew, right? Who knew it would be that huge? I know it's because your kids, the TikToks and all of that, right? It's just videos, pretty cool editing in it, but it's just that one little thing that's different. There are many, many other social media apps that never caught on.
This is the Play Your Position podcast, where we huddle up, call the plays, and inspire you to run your ball into the end zone. Are you ready to score more game-winning touchdowns in your life, business, and career? Then listen up, because it's game time, baby. Now, here's your host, Mary Lou Kaiser.
Hello, Team PYP. Mary Lou Kaiser here. Welcome to another episode of the Play Your Position podcast, where we celebrate people who are committed to showing up as themselves so that they can win at this game called life. Today is no exception. I have a fabulous guest ready to take us on his leadership journey. His name is Calvin Brown. Calvin, are you ready for kickoff?
I'm very ready. Thank you for having me.
Yes. So team, here's what I know about Calvin. He has developed applications for some of the world's largest brands. What makes him unique is his dedication to educate entrepreneurs and other tech professionals on how to create the software that we all know and love. The tech group that he created for Black coders, called Black Men Code, has now grown to over 1,000 professionals. His many publications have aided him in his mission to spread knowledge, educate entrepreneurs, and empower them to solve their own technical issues. And he is coming to us today from the city of Atlanta, Georgia. So Calvin, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah. So as our starting quarterback today, on game day, Calvin, the first question right out of the gate is, would you please share your story of when you got the call to leadership, and how did that call shape the current position you're playing as someone who works with entrepreneurs on tech issues and runs this amazing group?
So the call to leadership was one that I attempted to ignore in my early life. I would always do different things, and I would be the person who's a little more vocal. I would speak up on things, and people would kind of push me out front and say, "Hey, why don't you present for us?" Right, when you're part of a group or just whatever it is, I would speak for the group, and so that was kind of a natural thing that I had going, but I never leaned into it. I think that I found that voice, which also I will be honest and say I think was accidentally, was I just at a certain point, just being a consultant and just wanting more and wanting to be able to do more and define what it looked like in the tech space. And to provide a little context, you're talking about the .com phase, late 90s, all over the place. People can now find gigs online type of thing. And it was just really taking shape. And so it didn't really have a lot of protections. It didn't really have a lot of, you can't just video someone. That didn't even exist. So just organizing that, I just found myself leading in a lot of ways. And, people tend to follow if you do what you say you're going to do and you uphold your word. So that's kind of how I found it. So it was a few years into my regular, hey, I'm just going to do my thing for me and my family. And then it grew to the company that we have now. So it's, based both here in Atlanta and in LA. And just, having employees and just all of that just came out of, I guess, what most would call natural leadership. I don't know if I 100% agree. I think sometimes it's just necessary in order to get what you need accomplished. So we grow into that.
Mm. Yeah, I don't think everybody seeks it out the way you just described. It was more of an evolutionary thing.
Hmm.
And I'm curious, what drew you to the tech industry to start with? What of all the things you could have pursued, did you have an early experience, messing around on a keyboard, or what was it that pulled you into the tech sector?
I really didn't have any real tech experience. I only can remember having one course. I grew up in a small town in Mississippi. So my school, you're talking early to mid 90s, it didn't have computers. And
Hmm.
so, well, it didn't have enough for everyone to have one, I should say that. And so I remember distinctly this one class, and it was Microsoft Excel. So, shout out to Bill Gates for that. But it was a simple sum function. You put something in one, you put another value in another, and add the two together. And I thought it was the coolest thing. And I had to hurry up and get off because, another 10 kids needed to do the exact same test. And that was my only experience, but I do believe that was the spark when I decided to leave Mississippi and come to, quote unquote, the big city of Atlanta. I came and I had a relative who was doing software. I thought I wanted to fix computers. I did not know that software existed.
Mm.
And he offered me an internship. And I say this every time I go live. It was unpaid internship, but it ended up being one of the best things in life. I got an understanding of what it did they did healthcare. So if you think about imaging and radiology and just the ways that it impacted people's lives, I made a connection between kind of my more what we call the Mother Teresa side of myself,
Yeah.
being able to pursue a career. I could actually help in doing that, and I would be able to give from my talent, and it kind of just went crazy from there.
Wow, what a great story. And I love that it wasn't this big drawn out plan that you had, but rather one small experience
Hmm.
and you were hooked. You saw what the magic of the computer program. It's like, wow, that can do this. And I also like that you emphasized an unpaid internship. I think being an apprentice where you get hands-on learning, where you get to work around people who are professionals is by far one of the best experiences a person can have. And you're never too late to do it. I mean, people are doing apprenticeships and internships well into their later years because maybe they switched careers or
Hmm.
it was just something they always wanted to do. So
Absolutely.
that's very inspirational, very inspirational.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what's the hardest thing about being a leader right now for you, Calvin? What are some of the challenges that you're seeing out there in the tech industry these days?
I think that the hardest thing for the tech industry is to have compassion for people on the other end of your tech. So
Mm.
we have self-driving cars, we have, these devices in our homes, we carry them around all day, and they're kind of like, hey, use this like this. But for the most part, there is no real education around all of these things. Like, how do they really work? What's the purpose of it? For example, if you have a device in your home that you use to, I don't know, cut off your lights or any of those types of things, it samples every so often, just the room, just to, continuously update itself with how you speak and how you talk. As of late, that's become like a real privacy issue. It wasn't kind of put out there out front, but it's little things like that, I think, that are, it's like, let's just try it type of things. I think that's the real challenge of tech, even when we build, your coolest of cool apps, the tracking, the getting the emails afterwards that, hey, you were looking at this thing before, would you still like to buy it? I think that that's probably the toughest part of it because there's no real lines right now and you just never really know. And we're obviously building this for other people, but you just never really know how far that'll go. So I think that's probably the toughest part of it. Otherwise, we have amazing fun. I still get up extra early every morning. I'm really excited every day. One of my project managers always asks me in his text messages in the morning, he's like, I know you're already up, but when do you go to sleep? Because So I'm still really excited about it. I still notice the change that it makes, in just our everyday lives. Literally, anything from a self-checkout system at the grocery store to, your kid wants an app for their graduation, right, to share with their friends and their favorite songs, stuff like that. So we're able to do just any and everything.
Hmm. So
And
you have an app building company, is that right?
yes, we build all manners of software. So there's apps, there's your, like I just mentioned, your grocer self checkout. They're either number one or number two largest airline in the world here in America, and how your bags get checked in and that cool text message you get after that, that's us. So we
Wow.
build any and everything. So if you tell us what you need, we figure out how to build it. We probably already built something similar before, and we kind of go from there.
That's fabulous. And how long have you been in business?
I've been in business since 2003. I've been
Okay.
in software
Oh,
since 19.
OG.
Yeah.
I love
I
it.
knew this. These gray hairs, man.
Yeah. Yeah. So my son's friends just called me a podcaster OG because when they found out how long I've been doing it, they're like, whoa. And I was like, hey, I'll take that as a compliment.
That is definitely a compliment, and that's 2014 for you, right?
Yeah, yeah, I'm in my eighth year, which is hard to
Nice.
believe sometimes. I think about all these incredible people like yourself, Calvin, who have said yes to life,
Mhm.
who believe in giving back and doing good in the world through the work that they do or the company that they've built, like you have. And I'm sure that you inspire people to pursue their dreams, but I would like to turn the spotlight on you in terms of the coaching relationships you've been fortunate to have, people who have shaped you into the leader and the man that you are. Is there someone specific who has been a particular influence on you, Calvin? And how did he or she affect the way you get stay excited to get up every day because you love your work?
Absolutely. When I came to Atlanta, I had a relative, it was a cousin. There was actually a distant cousin who, her husband actually, who's, at this point not even really related to me. He was the founder of the software company, and she was supporting that. And she's, just great at running business and being organized, but he had the technical chops.
Hmm.
And it was his idea. Once we met at a kind of a family reunion, it was his idea for me to intern with them. And he would just always stress that he just wanted to show me how it worked. Like he would always say, "Hey, you can do whatever you want, but I just want to show you how it works." But he understood where tech was going and that it needed a younger perspective, like the new happenings. Now, mind you, this is, I'm dating myself, but this is the dial-up phase of
Yeah.
things. So but he could see when it was faster because he worked in healthcare, and this massive x-ray of someone's lungs took so long for them to render, right, for them to see. There were no iPads at the time, so they had to go back to a workstation, but he could foresee the future when things were faster and you were able to do the things that we do now on an iPad and be able to have these telehealth type of conversation. He would discuss when things were faster, and he always said it would take a younger, fresher mind. And I didn't get it then. I was kind of like, man, these dudes are kind of old. And I like it when we go to lunch because they all have nice cars, but I don't know what they're talking about. And lo and behold, that 2000s was a critical time. That would have been 96 when I started there. And then after the internship, he kind of kicked me out. I was like, okay, well, you have enough. And I was like, there's no way I have enough information. You're talking 3 months. And he was like, you have enough. And I can remember going to meetings and things like that, and it just being so impactful in the way things I still do today.
Mm,
And by the way, just mentioning him by name, his name is Gary Burgess. He started a company called Healthcare Integrated System, which is still around to this
wow.
day, doing amazing work. Like people still seek him out for that. He's just an amazing crafter of things, and just very thoughtful in the way that he did things. So he laid a path that I haven't had to abandon. And I think receiving that, I tell him all the time, I haven't found anything else that's been more true. It's just, he loved what he did, and you didn't have to be this crazy business person in order to do it. He just did it with love, and it found its way.
Hmm. Yeah. If you show up with love, I mean, that's all you need.
All the time.
I believe that if you show up with love for what you do, for the people you work with, you're never going to have a bad day.
Hmm.
It's not. So it's great. Good shout out to Gary. It's awesome. Now, I know things don't always go according to plan, Calvin. So would you share a story about a time when you found yourself playing out of position, when things didn't line up, that X's and O's on the whiteboard? You thought, yeah, I got this. And then, you were sacked, intercepted, or metaphorically fumbled the ball. What happened? And then what was the lesson that you learned from that experience?
Yeah, so one of the things that I definitely learned, and in keeping with your football metaphor, is it's the type of team that you play for. So some teams are heavy defense, some teams are heavy offense. And in my particular area, mine is more one of offense, planning up front, just being clear and all of those things. And as you seek to grow, you oftentimes think, hey, I don't know what's going on in that stratosphere, so I'm going to just, kind of let others guide me. And when you stop listening to your inner self and just say, they probably know best, it's going to all go wrong. I have, done extremely well in software and then ventured out to do other things with that success. And you just don't pour into it the same. It doesn't turn out the same. And you end up kind of neglecting the baby to, go and do other things. And I think that's probably been the hardest lesson I've had to learn, is that while I do have many other talents and I do those things as hobbies, my heart is kind of with one thing, and I have to trust myself at every level, no matter, software is one of the very few things that's exactly the same, no matter how big it is. So if you have one customer or 1 million customers, they're all looking at the same web page or app, right? It's just what happens in the back end that makes it different. And I never really trusted those instincts to say, hey, we can do those, really huge projects. I thought you would have to do other things and be, different in order to do that. And I think that that's probably the worst thing you can do, is never trust what you've already rehearsed.
Mm-hmm. Wise words. Stay focused, show up and play your position the way you know best, and let the rest of the team help out. I mean, that's such a great reminder when, oh my gosh, I was thinking of my own life when I veered off course, and, I learned some things. I think it was necessary in my journey, and I'm sure listeners can relate. You take your eye off the ball, think, oh, over there.
Yeah,
And you realize,
exactly.
no, not over here.
Mhm.
Oh my goodness. Especially, I mean, with anything, but when you're dealing with technology, like you said, on the back end, I remember in the early 2000s when you were just starting your business, I was teaching at a tech college and I had students. I was teaching English and writing, so I wasn't in the hard tech skills classes, but they would come in and talk about the things they were doing. And I remember them talking about if there was one character wrong in the code, the whole thing was broken.
Hmm.
And I thought, man, you have to have amazing attention to detail
Hmm.
for a program as complex as some of these healthcare systems you're talking about
Hmm.
to operate, and for people's lives to be depending on that. That's
Hmm.
a big responsibility.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
The things that we learned with the 777 planes, right? That's just software that was guiding the system. So, that was not set up properly. So it caused those planes to fail. So, we have to take that into account, and we do work on those sorts of things.
Mm.
And so you have to be really focused. And for the record, I've never done anything else. I literally decided one day, it was probably ridiculous, but I literally decided as a very young person, this was a sink or swim thing.
Wow.
And I think I was 19. And you have these things. I always say there's going to be a made for TV movie about my life. But I decided it'll be in the movies since, they're probably, I'm sorry, it won't be in the movie theater because, there's, with the whole COVID thing, there were no movies. But sometimes I question that, but other times I'm like, wow, just looking back at the thing. So I make a list when I feel like that of things I'm super grateful for that we've had the opportunity to do. And
Mhm.
I think it's one of the best decisions ever, but it can be a very stressful one because of the things we just mentioned.
Sure, absolutely.
It's halftime here at the Play Your Position podcast, and we've got ourselves a great game. While you're up grabbing another snack and topping off your favorite beverage, make sure to subscribe to the show so you never miss another play. PYP is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever great podcasts can be found. Now, let's get back to the game.
Well, kudos to you for making that decision at that young of an age. There are people who are still trying to figure out what they're going to do, and they're, twice that or more. So it really does come down to making a decision for anything and then sticking with it, closing those doors. I'll never forget the time I was at a storytelling conference, and the man who was speaking on the stage talked about how we tend to think of being in jail or imprisoned as this bad thing. He says, when I got married, I shut the door on everything, every other woman in the world, that I was just going to have my wife and that was it. And he said, the freedom I had after that decision was phenomenal, that my, non-attached friends could not relate to. And yet they were running around miserable because they kept looking for they kept looking for something that wasn't there. So when making a decision and then sticking with it can be one of the best decisions of your life, whether it's like for you with your work, your business, in a relationship, in a place where you want to put your roots down. You're not going to get to do everything, but everything you do is going to be awesome.
Yeah. And I often find myself thinking that other things are really cool. Like, I have friends that are doctors and they're like, no, you should never.
That's
right. I literally considered maybe about 10, 12 years ago, like maybe I should have been a doctor. Like it would have been a lot easier. And they're like, no, definitely not. So everything has its pros and cons, but when you're not in your season, you're like, geez, this is probably not the best idea. But I keep on trucking, and I always think of that. It's almost reckless what I did because I was too young to really understand what I was committing.
Wow.
But I'm a committed person in that way.
Well, it's paid off for you in many ways, which is really cool. And as somebody who's in tech, Calvin, you definitely have the bird's eye seat on trends. What's coming down the pike. You mentioned self-driving cars, which are here to some capacity, not in a mass way yet, but this century we will probably see them become part of that. I won't be around for that, I don't think, but I think about my kids and any grandchildren I might have. But when you look into your crystal ball, what do you think is going to have the greatest impact on how we are all showing up to play our positions in work and life?
What do I think will have the greatest impact? I think everything that is coming is already here in some ways. When we talk about tech, say, for example, autonomous driving or self-driving, cars have for the last 10 years already had lane departure stuff. So, just nudge you a little bit if you get too far off. So that was the start of that tech. And so we're just, at stage 5 of 10, right? With it evolving. So nothing ever really in tech is brand new. Our iPhones are really cool, but they have these apps of things that, for the most part are already being done elsewhere. We used to have Palm Pilots that had our separate contacts and all of that. And the great people at Apple combined all of these things into one device. And that was really the thing that was like, oh, wow, this is really cool because nobody had ever seen it before. But we already had, devices that, you had a camera separately, you had a, thing of contact separately. So what's coming for us is technically already here. I believe that the general population is unaware that they shape a lot of what happens to tech. If you don't use it, they don't invest in it anymore. And so we can kind of define if autonomous driving is just not good for society, it will die. Nobody's going to put it out if no one will buy a car with it in it.
What do you think of those Oculus things? Those to me, I mean, I think they're so ridiculous. They look, you have that thing on your head and you're running around your room, VR. I don't know. I don't know if that's ever going to catch on, but I could just be the wrong generation. I just don't know.
It's not even meant for that. So what it's meant for is if you have a surgeon who's the original intent, I should say. If you had a surgeon who was out of town and or just elsewhere, and they had history with a particular patient, these robotic arms, so to speak, would be able to perform this while the person was not present in the same room. And
Aha.
so this can be life saving for a doctor that specializes in something, but may be in, the Middle East on vacation, right?
Sure.
And he's able to, take this up. And so that was the original intent, but we're Americans. So, we always need more time to watch TV and to play games. And so everything evolves into something as that becomes a sport eventually.
Right. A
So that,
consumer product.
yeah,
Mm.
consumer product, because, that's the largest market, right? People can buy things for 99 bucks. I personally get really dizzy using them. So they're not for me. But I do understand the usefulness. Mechanics in the future will be able to diagnose without you bringing in your car, that sort of thing.
Yeah. That is cool. I mean, I think this last year where suddenly everybody had to work from home and, those of us who have been doing that already and we're familiar with the drawing the boundaries between I'm working now and now I'm in my house, or hey, I'm jumping on a Zoom call. I mean, those were old hat for those of us who were early adopters of the work from home approach.
Hmm.
But for people who were used to going to an office every day and then suddenly they had to navigate this completely different way of working. And now, as what are we, 15 months post
Hmm.
the first official lockdown, and a huge percentage of people are like, I'm never going back to an office. Why
Right.
should I go back to an office? I don't need to commute. I
Mhm.
like this. And
Yeah.
then there are people like, I really need to be in an office. So we'll see.
Yeah, I was asked today, what's my feeling on people going back into the office. As a company, I have never, since we had sufficient internet, so I'll say the last 10 years, I've
Mm,
never asked my people to pick up the laptops that we supply them and move them to an office and work. I've always been big on just that time with your family. It prevents car accidents and all of that stuff.
true.
And you have to just kind of trust your people. I think that's a lost thing when it comes to employers. Is
Mm,
just that trust and giving people that space. I don't care if you do it at 2 o'clock in the morning. If it's ready, by the time we're doing a demo, then hey, what are you going to do about it really anyway? So
good
that's
point.
concern as you grow that you can't do. But yeah, for the last 10 years, for sure, I've never asked. Almost rarely get together for work. We'll get together and go eat, but we don't do those things because I think that the family dynamic is really important. And driving, Atlanta has terrible traffic. So driving an hour each direction to go, 5 miles is probably not the best use of time.
Or gas, you think of the
Yeah.
environment, all that
But
stuff.
the environment, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you're definitely a futurist. You have seen things ahead of the average person, which is
Hmm.
certainly, gives you a competitive advantage as
Hmm.
somebody in the tech sector. But I can tell you also care a lot about people and you want people to have a quality of life and work, right? I mean, that's
Hmm.
over the years, how many people have said that elusive work-life balance? Well, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And I don't
Absolutely.
remember who originally said that, but that gets tossed around, and it's true.
Absolutely.
True. Yeah.
I don't view I view work, what we call it work, which makes it sound hard, but I view it as this thing, right? So someone comes to us with their vision. There's this thing in their head and they can't share it with anyone else until we manifest it in some form or way. And that's just an amazing thing. We call it the birth of the baby in house. Like, it's the birth of this idea, something that never existed in time and space before. And so that's a really cool thing. You're a part of someone's life, particularly the ones that take off for, clients that are trying something, people who, sometimes we do individuals, they invest their life savings into an idea. And just someone to trust you in that way and all of that is just really, really, really a cool part of what we do. So I don't really consider it work. I mean, you find a way to do it and you find what you love about it and you hire people to do things that you don't enjoy.
Amen to that, I tell you. being able to delegate. Okay, you do this, and like, I love this. Great, because I don't. Oh, that's awesome. Well, we're at the part of the show I call Touchdown, Calvin. So I'm going to put you in the red zone, and there are less than 30 seconds left on the clock. You are down by 4 points. It's third down, which means it's now or never. Tell us a story about a time when you metaphorically got that ball into the end zone for the game-winning touchdown.
Wow. I think this happens all the time for us. There's always Apple at the time of this recording is, a quadrillion, trillion dollar company. Yeah, it's just how kids make up numbers when they're talking to you. That's probably how much they're worth. So they're just really tough sometimes to get things through when clients need things to be in the app store at the right time. And I have on more than, I'd probably say 25 occasions, just stayed up through the night to get that exact email to say, all right, this is ready to get this going, to kind of get things out. And, you'll be amazed at the other ladies and gentlemen who just stick right by you. And, your teammates like, hey, why don't you get a couple hours sleep? I'll watch it. And we just kind of pull it out. Clients don't always know that, but we do those kind of things. And I think that's that, third and goal type of thing where, let's go for it. And I think if you don't have that drive, I don't think you can really win. And the winning isn't really on our end, right? It's really for the other end of it. The client themselves, right? The people who are like, hey, this needed to be out by today, or, I won't make my pitch meeting or whatever it is. I think that's when we shine. It's just our commitment to doing what we say we're going to do and just having fun while we're doing it.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. It's the win is when you see your client excited and happy with the end product. And you're in a business where that's something you get to do. There's actually a tangible result at the end of the tunnel. And that's really neat. I'm curious, what do you say to people who say, oh, Calvin, the app market is just way oversaturated. There's no more room for another app. I mean, how do you respond to that?
I always ask them, have they seen the enterprise market? So there's an entire app store market just for businesses that most people don't even know exist. And there are, again, 100 trillion billion apps for everything from, calculating mileage when you're driving to, just the most rudimentary things, right? Counting people as they walk into a venue. The app and its function is for that business. In the enterprise store, of course, but in the personal app store, if you want something really cool or whatever, you're definitely taking a chance. But there's always just this one thing that finds its cult following. I mean, Pokemon is nothing more than a different, game, which was a TV show, that sort of thing. But who knew, right? Who knew it would be that huge?
Right.
I know it's because your kids, the TikToks and all of that, right? It's just videos, pretty cool editing in it, but it's just that one little thing that's different. There are many, many other social media apps that never caught on. So it's always about the timing. I recently read Malcolm Gladwell's book, and he was discussing just how time.
The tipping point?
No, it was and I'm sorry, it's evading me right now. The Outliers.
Outliers, right.
There we go, the Outliers. And he was talking about the importance of timing. Of course, working hard is important, but timing. Had I been born 20 years earlier, the timing wouldn't have been the same. I wouldn't have turned 18 and graduated right at that time in the dot-com phase, not met me yet. So timing is really important for a lot of things. And so we can't discount that when it comes to our efforts as well.
That's right. You think about, I remember those early days of apps, Angry Birds was a huge phenomenon, and there was really nothing else, and now there's a gazillion games, and you're right, they're slight variations of familiar themes. TikTok is basically the new Vine. Remember Vine, and then Vine went down, and then there was a lull, and now TikTok's here.
Absolutely.
So.
Absolutely. And nobody even talks about Vine anymore, but they set the stage for this. And so, the people at TikTok were probably like, hey, come on now. Who's going to invest this much into it? Until it caught on. It caught on at a really high level. Non-politically, it was getting attention at the White House. It's that huge of an effort. So, just think about that. You're just someone who has a cool idea, and then, now there's laws being made around the things that you created. That's cool, no matter what the outcome is. That's really cool.
Mhm. Yeah, I have a question about that. So there is a lot of talk these days about the loose rules around the giants, the tech giants, in terms of what they can do, and how there are actual laws that are kind of a get out of free jail card for tech companies. They're
Mhm.
off the hook. Do you think that in the next, 5 or 10 years, we may see more strict regulations around the tech industry?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Before when the radio was invented, you could broadcast to anyone, right, who had a receiver and say whatever you wanted. And we found out that probably wasn't the best idea for people to, because they could create and kind of galvanize communities for any reason. Some of those reasons are nefarious, and others are, just really, good things. Meaning like how people have been inside, and Zoom was used for people to attend services or to connect with family members. I think that's a really cool thing. But the regulation has to exist, and the reason it has to exist from a tech person is there's no education about what you're doing. You're not aware that when you get this free email that the contents of your email are for sale, which is how they get marketing dollars.
Yep.
It's there for you to read, but I mean, I think it would probably time out if you took the time to read all before you clicked accept, right? It would probably time out. And then they amend it, right? You get these emails every now and again say, your 274 page disclaimer has been updated. And so who keeps up with that? It's the same as if you're keeping up with every law that's ever been passed. So since we don't have an educated public who, there's no course at the time on what are we doing? Who gets our data? Why is it never deleted? I think that the government has to protect its citizens in that way, or at least attempt to protect it in that way. Simply similar to what the FCC did, because people were like, just organizing in the most random ways. When radio was invented, I don't think this is any different.
No, I don't think so. And it's interesting that you described the early days of radio. And I was thinking as you were talking, yeah, sounds a lot like what we saw over the last year in terms of, these groups on different social platforms.
Hmm.
And I understand it's controversial and there are very distinct factions of opinions out there. But,
Hmm.
at the end of the day, if you want a country as complex as the United States to function,
Hmm.
there's give and take. It has to be a give and take. You can't have everything. And
Absolutely. And
yeah,
we have to be able to color things with the correct shades.
yes.
Everybody's entitled to an opinion. Everybody's entitled to express themselves, but we have to color things with the fact that it is an opinion.
Hmm.
Or like, hey, I studied this for 20 years. This is not something I just made up this weekend. So that should hold a little bit more weight. And so we have to color our reality with things that help people to move forward. That's going to be very dangerous. You have to remember children have access to the internet.
Oh, yes.
And so, they're shaping their ideas of the world
Hmm.
based on what they consume. And, we know how that turns out if, there's no clear distinction between reality. That's why we don't let them watch certain TV shows when they're young. And so the internet is no different.
It isn't. It's no different. Well, you're definitely getting into really important territory on the need for education, the need for people to take a stand and say, this is okay and this is not, and have that clear line in the sand.
Hmm.
As we wrap things up today, Calvin, what are 1 to 3 key offensive strategies straight out of your leadership playbook that listeners could take today and implement in a way that made them see some forward progress in their work and or life?
I would say the first is plan, plan, plan. Um, I spend a block of hours every Sunday just thinking about the week, and you would be amazed at how much smoother things go when you plan. The second is listen to those who've done what you've done before. It seems like the most novel and simple idea, but we don't oftentimes seek things out, especially when you've been doing it for a really long time, right? Mary, you've been doing this since 2014. You're like, hey, I kind of got this podcast thing. Like, it's kind of smooth, you know exactly what to do. But listening to others and their experience, you're like, wow, I never knew that. You've been hitting this button and, all the time it would have done it automatically every 30 seconds. You just didn't know that. And I think that there's so much to learn from each other. So learning from others who are doing exactly what you're doing is super important. And lastly, I would say just make sure that everybody around you is enjoying it as well. There's so much of a big payoff. I don't think anybody wants to be at the end of their life and like, wow, I'm glad I filled my timesheets out correctly. All those years, right? People want to enjoy their lives and just make things as less ridiculous in their day-to-day lives. I think that that's probably what we're here for. I always joke that we all get 1 to 2 really, really good talents, but we need the other talents of others in order for ours to work. And so, I think the things that we do well make it easier for other people. And so I think we should just live in that way, be it work or otherwise. Just do your best to make others' lives easy. And you'd be amazed at how much they give in return.
Mm-hmm. It's so, so true. I love those tips. Thank you for those great reminders. And for people who would like to connect with you, Calvin, online, where do you hang out?
They can find me any number of links I'm sure you guys will share, but you can go to my site is iamcalvinbrown.com. My company's website is Kairu Consulting. That's KAIRU consulting.com. I'm on Twitter at iamcalvinbrown. And of course on LinkedIn, I'm pretty sure there's 3 to 4 million Calvin Browns, but you can find me. That link for that is also on my site as well. So you can find me and connect.
Yeah, and I will put links to connect with Calvin on his show notes page at pyppodcast.com. So there'll be another place for you to go and make connecting with him easy and seamless. You don't have to go hunting around, because when I was looking for you on LinkedIn, I was like, oh yeah, there's a lot of Calvin Browns out there. But thankfully I knew what you looked like and I was able to pick you out. That's the funny thing about certain names is if it's a more common name, you got to have a little bit more intel. So we'll make it easy for folks. And before we say goodbye, I know in the pre-chat we were talking about your sports team, Calvin. Who do you like to watch when you're giving yourself a little bit of entertainment and downtime?
Oh, so I don't have a football team. I don't just have one that I'm like, oh my God, I love this team. I should follow this team for life. But I am a basketball fan, and the Brooklyn Nets been my team for the last few years. I just really just kind of enjoyed kind of their rise and just, the rebuilding. And once they moved into the new stadium, I think it just kind of a new energy was there for us. So I kind of like those stories, right? You kind of redefine yourself. Because they were kind of trash before. Yeah,
they've certainly been on a reinvention track for a while, and they'll settle in. They'll get all the pieces, and we're not against other sports here at PYP. I love all the sports. Right now, it's hockey in my house. It's all the hockey, the NHL playoffs. It doesn't matter. Whatever the sport is, we watch the derbies, we watch baseball. Football, of course, is probably number one. And then, of course, basketball is fun, too. So love it. And Calvin, you've been great today. I want to thank you for showing up and bringing your A game to us here at PYP. It's good to get inside the lives of people like you who are behind the scenes with the tech that we take for granted now. And know that there's real humans doing really great work to make our lives easier. And for that, I want to thank you.
You're very welcome.
Hey team, Mary Lou here. Who's number one in football changes from year to year. Fashion trends come and go, same with musical tastes. But leadership skills, they never go out of style. In fact, these days, leadership is an essential survival skill for a world that demands more from us than ever before. To succeed these days, you need to know how to show up for yourself so that you can then do the work you love with people you like the way you want. The Play Your Position Leadership Playbook helps you do this, and it's free. Go to pyppodcast.com to download your copy today. If being more successful this year, next year, in the 21st century is on your to-do list, get your copy of the Play Your Position Leadership Playbook now. pyppodcast.com. It's at the top of the page. You can't miss it. That's pyppodcast.com, and start being more of the leader you are meant to be today. This podcast was produced by Daniel Romeros. Show notes for this episode can be found over at pyppodcast.com. I'm Mary Lou Kaiser. Thanks for listening.
Got a great key offensive strategy you like to share? Write to us at coach@pyppodcast.com or on Twitter, use #PYP and let us know how you're running your ball into the end zone for those game-winning touchdowns.